I got this in the mail yesterday. This is the Trumpeter 1/200 scale model Titanic. Now this is very exciting to talk about because my team reviewed it and corrected it for Trumpeter themselves. They sent us 2 prototype model kits, and we reviewed it over the course of about a month or 2. We actually were the first people outside of Trumpeter themselves, as I understand it, to build that prototype, finish it off, paint it, and using that prototype, we took thousands of photographs of it and found everything we possibly could that was wrong with it, took notes, took references, and sent them back to Trumpeter. It was up to Trumpeter's discretion to figure out which of our suggestions they wanted to actually incorporate and which ones they didn't. By the way, major props to Trumpeter for that move. Very few companies would actually delay their final product just for the sake of historical authenticity. So I really have to commend them on that, and I think in the long term that's going to help them. Speaking of authenticity, let me draw your attention to one of my favorite things on this box here. We've got our company logo, Titanic Honor and Glory, at the top of the box. In a sense, it's us giving our seal of approval for the model. We weren't paid to do that, we weren't bribed or anything like that. We did get a couple free models because we asked for it, but other than that, we just wanted to see this get done right. Under that is this paragraph. This kit was reviewed and corrected to enhance the authenticity of the final model. Special thanks are due to Matthew DeWinkler, Kyle Hudak, Thomas Linsky, Zeno Silva, and the rest of the team of the video game Titanic Honor and Glory, with additional thanks to Titanic historian Jonathan Smith. I especially like that paragraph because I wrote it. Let me break it down a little bit. There were 4 of us mainly working on reviewing this model within our team. Matt, Kyle, myself, and Zeno. Now, to prevent any sort of internal struggles over credit, I decided to just put the names in alphabetical order there. We also had some outside help. Victor Villa of the Brazilian Titanic Society joined forces with us and helped us review especially some of the areas that we couldn't get to, some of the side parts of the ship, as well as helping with references. So even though he's not listed on the box, I wanted to give him and his society a really nice shout out because they truly deserve it. The last line gives additional credit to British Titanic historian Jonathan Smith. He helped out quite a bit. He wasn't working with us, he was working with Trumpeter directly, but he also was putting a lot of effort into making this model look right. It's a bit oddly worded. I typed it up on my phone while I was doing something else. I didn't realize that when I sent it, it would be used verbatim. I very much like this painting on the front of the box. It's the ship in Cherbourg. You don't really see that much. We see the Nomadic sailing up alongside of it, which still exists today, by the way, as a museum in Belfast, and we see the French flag flying from the foremast. Now, I have rambled for long enough. Why don't we pop this baby open and see what's inside? The instruction manual opens up with several historical photographs, the Titanic under construction, the Titanic in Southampton and setting sail, and then we have this very nice long historical write-up right here. This was actually written by Jonathan Smith. I remember him writing that. And these photos, I believe, are from his personal collection. Jonathan Smith has an excellent collection of photographs. And then we go into the instructions. We have the parts overview, and then we have the very first stuff. And as always with these models, one of the first things you gotta do is install the first decks. So we've got C-deck parts going in. These are the bases of your forward and aft well decks. And then after that, you're gonna start assembling some of the casings on the aft well deck, and then install the poop deck and the forecastle. I won't go too much into this. You're gonna really wanna explore this for yourself, but it's a nice, simplistic overview going all the way through, so the pictures are nice and clear. It seems very comprehensive. There are details even inside the bridge. And then later on, you're going to start getting into the photo-etched parts and installing them. If you're not much of a scale modeler, the purpose for photo-etched parts is they're made of brass because the plastic moldings can't get too detailed without becoming flimsy or you get errors in the plastic molding. There's also a color guide that they included with it, so you can use this as a painting reference, and a promo for the upgrade kit that's going to be coming out soon, if it isn't out already, and it has even more photo-etched parts, wooden decks, and metal propellers, and who knows what else, but this looks really cool. I'm dying to get a hold of one of these. This model comes lit. It actually includes the LED lights within the kit. That's not all that common with scale modeling. That's pretty cool that they would include this actually as part of the base product. product and not included in the add-on, which you pay extra for. I believe this box right here, these are the LED lights. One of the neat things about them is they're pretty realistic. They actually give this look of shining down in the different rooms as opposed to just illuminating like a giant bulb inside the ship. One of the things I've noticed with some of the models that people have produced is they just put a light in the center, or maybe one or two throughout the ship, and therefore you get it really glowing in one part of the ship. It's a very uneven lighting throughout, but this type of lighting that they provide is able to get around that. And as I said, it shines down. And most of Titanic's lights, of course, were ceiling lights, so this gives an even more authentic impression throughout it. USB powered, plug that right into your phone charger if you'd like. You get a green LED and you get a red LED, presumably for the navigation lights on the two sides of the bridge. And then inside here is your LED strip light. This is probably going to unravel and give you a nice even lighting throughout the ship. Box this back up, and now let's take a look at the hull. The hull obviously is this very long white cardboard box inside. You pull it out. Foam packaging on the two ends to really make sure it doesn't slip around and damage itself while shipped. This is massive. What is it, 3.5, 4 feet long? It's incredible. I'm 6 feet to give you an impression of how long it is. Yeah, that's about 4 feet. That's more than 4 feet. This is ultra detailed. It is beautifully molded. In fact, it's even got the holes for sewage discharge all along the ship. Now, in order to light this ship properly, you are going to have to drill out the windows. Do not drill out every hole here, especially not the sewage pipes, but do not drill out every window. Titanic was not completely finished when it set sail on its voyage, and it was significantly underbooked. They left the lights off in many of these cabins. I would leave the windows undrilled in the cabins that you do not want lit. Really give it a scattered look. You're going to want these double windows all along to be completely lit unless you're doing a nighttime diorama. The upper deck here that you see molded is D-deck, and this is the dining room and the ship's galleys. After dinner, after the stewards had finished setting the table for the next morning, the lights were turned off. At the time of Titanic sinking, those lights would have been off. So don't drill those out unless you want a daytime illumination setup. One thing that's really neat is they actually have the holes cut through on the forward well deck for the mooring lines to come up to the capstans. But interestingly, they don't on the aft well deck. You're probably going to want to cut those through. Just be careful doing so. With a model this large, interiors, especially if you are drilling out holes, are something you might want to consider. We're going to start delving into that on our store, offering interior options for models like this. Let's start looking at these other boxes here. Let's start with this one right here. Aha. These pieces, of course, these are the siding for the ship's superstructure. These are the forward half of the superstructure. This is going to go right about there. All one piece. This is very large. It would be very easy for someone to 3D print pieces to adapt this model to be Olympic or Britannic. Hint, hint. I spy some pieces of lifeboats, some deck machinery. Bulkheads for the interiors of the promenade deck. We've also got some bridge details, the bridge cab, and the inner bulkheads for that. And then the entire front of the forecastle is one piece. This, I don't know why, but of all the models I've built, aside from the hull, this piece was always my favorite. It just has such a defining look to it that's so uniquely Titanic, although it's not actually uniquely Titanic. Olympic had the same one, Britannic had the same one, and surprisingly a lot of the White Star Line ships from the same era did too. Many, many pieces in here. These two parts are going to be your C-deck inserts, your forward and aft well deck. And then we've got two more trees underneath. We've got cargo crane bases right here. We have water tanks. The amount of detail on this is exceptional, and you really have to, when you're working with this scale, have all of this detail. With these models, your imagination really starts to run because you start picturing it built. It really gets you motivated to go and build it. Moving over to the middle two boxes, this is box B. We have the stand, the Queen of the Ocean, Titanic, 1/200 scale Trumpeter. And then we have the aft segments of the superstructure siding. This is one big piece. This is the A-deck promenade, the forward section. In this area we have first class cabins, we have the grand staircase right here, and this is the first class lounge. This is all one block of a piece. It's gonna sit down right about there. It's a bit odd seeing how they make entire deck houses one single part. Like this one right here, the top of the engine casing skylights. In this part we have the wings for the outer propellers, and then we have the propellers. Ah, that's a really neat feature. Take a look at that. There's a heated debate. It's heated. I don't exaggerate that when I say it's heated. People really get into it. But there's a debate about how many propeller blades does Titanic's central propeller have, 3 or 4. There's a photograph that everyone says is Titanic where you see 4 blades on the central propeller. That's not Titanic. That's actually the Olympic. But what Trumpeter did here is they gave you both. Whatever way you want to fall on that debate, you will be satisfied. And then we've got the rudder right here as well. A lot of the parts of the ship that duplicate, such as the many lifeboat davits throughout, you're not really going to have a tree of just lifeboat davits. They seem to be sticking them in wherever they could fit them. By the way, I don't know if this is just my kit or if it's all of them, but the boxes seem to be packaged really tight. I was trying to be really careful when opening this, and despite how careful I was, it still ended up ripping the whole side down. We're moving on to box C. Let's see what's inside of that. We've got the after part of the A deck inside structure. This is the first class smoke room and the aft grand staircase. You can see this hole is where the dome would sit. This will be going right about there. There's just slots for the windows. You're gonna have to install them yourselves, and they come here in the brass parts. We get benches, we get railings, we get ladders, and then, as always, you have a ton of railings. Inside this foam packaging are the 2 glass domes that hung over Titanic's grand staircases, the forward and aft grand staircase. Obviously, they're going to be plastic. We have the raised roofs over the first class smoke room and the lounge, the poop deck and the forecastle deck, and the funnels. Each of them shipped in one single piece. You're going to have to put the ladders and the piping along the side separately. We have 2 more photo etch sheets, so you actually get 7 of them with it. We also have the decals in here. Without taking it out of the plastic, because I want to leave this as mint as possible, we can actually see the decals on the box itself. It comes with most of the flags that the Titanic ever flew. You've got the national flags, you've got the White Star Line flags. You've also got the Royal Mail flag, which is this white one here. And one thing that's really cool, because now we are working in such a massive scale, is it has the lifeboat plaque decals to be put onto each of the lifeboats. But my personal favorite, getting even more finely detailed, is item number 8. Those are the builder's plaques, the Harlan and Wolff builder's plaques. This massive piece right here is the forward deck house, the forward funnel, the grand staircase, and the second funnel. This is the bridge. Forward of this division are first class cabins, and then the officers' cabins, as well as the Marconi room right in the center. And after that is the forward grand staircase, the gymnasium, and the second funnel uptake. Let's close this up. Moving on to the final box for us to unpackage. This has to be the decks. I mean, it's the right size for it, and we haven't seen the decks yet. And what do you know? It's a deck. This is B deck. You can see the second class promenade at the aft end and the opening for the aft second class stairs. This is A deck, which of course was entirely first class accommodations with the exception of the forward second class stairs, which was right here and just cut through the deck. They didn't even have a doorway out to the rest of the deck. Cabins in the forward, then the forward grand staircase, the first class lounge, the reading and writing room. Aft of that would be the aft grand staircase. And then finally here we have the first class smoke room and the veranda and palm courts. All in one piece. Be very careful with them. It would be terrible if that were to break in half like the real ship. Finally, the boat deck. Holes cut out for the lounge and the engine ventilation, and then the grand staircases as well, and the smoke room, which is pretty neat that they actually incorporated that because obviously the lounge was on the deck below and it had a raised roof, so there wouldn't have been a floor there anyway. Packaging this box back up. Now before we leave, there's one last thing I want to do. I want to play a little bit with scale. So this is 1/200 scale, meaning if you had 200 of these and you line them all up nose to nose, that would be the same length as the Titanic. It's a 1/200th fraction of the size of the real Titanic. This is one of the largest consumerly available models of the Titanic you can acquire. But one of the most common scale models is the 350 scale model Titanic. I mean, a whole bunch of different companies have made this. This one was actually built by Park Stevenson, Titanic historian, who gave this to me, and it's one of my favorite Titanic possessions. So this is 350 scale, and as you can see, it is dwarfed by the hull of the 200 scale Titanic. If we line them up stern to stern, you'll see that it is just over halfway in length as this 200 scale model. Of course, if it were a 400 scale model, it would be a perfect half. Now let's go a little smaller. Next up, we've got the 1/1000 scale Titanic, which are available on our website, titanichg.com/store. These are 3D printed in 1/1000 scale, which means this would be 1/5 the size of this 200 scale. Getting a little mathy here. Going even smaller than that, and I'm talking really small. This is the smallest replica Titanic I have. I don't know what scale it is. It's actually a replica of the replicas of the Titanic that they sold in Titanic's gift shop in the barbershop in first class. I have no idea where I got it from. This boat has to be about 1/2500 scale. It's made of lead. It's really heavy. The 2500 scale replica that was sold on board the Titanic versus the 200 scale. What I really wanted to do was I wanted to find other things in the 200 scale to set alongside it, to give you an in-person physical demonstration of Titanic's scale. Well, it turns out 200 scale is a very odd scale to actually sell a model in. But the only thing I could pull out of my personal collection of model kits is the spruce glutes. The spruce glutes. That's right, lady. My glutes are of spruce. That wasn't funny.
It was funny.
No, it wasn't. The spruce goose. Although don't let Howard Hughes hear you say that. He demanded it be called the Hercules. Spruce goose was a bit of a derogatory term for the plane, but it is in 1/200 scale. Unfortunately, it's not built. However, this currently is the second largest plane ever built, but at the time it was built in the 1940s, it was the largest plane in the world. In fact, it was the largest plane they ever thought could possibly be built. Sitting it next to the hull of the 200 scale Titanic, we really get an impression for how much ships dwarf airplanes. But still, this is a massive craft to set alongside her. And for the longest time, the Spruce Goose was stationed next to the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California, so it's kind of fitting to sit this model down next to another ocean liner. Let's get an impression of the wingspan by putting the two wing parts next to each other. Pretty amazing. It's about 1/3 of the length of the ship. I've got this train carriage, an old 1880s train carriage from the Union Pacific Railroad. It's actually N gauge, which is not perfectly 200 scale, but it's in the 160s, 180s range, and it's the best I could find. But you still get a feeling for the Titanic compared to a train carriage back then. One of my personal favorite comparisons, and this one actually is in 200 scale, I believe. A King Tiger tank from World War II. This is how it would sit right next to the Titanic. The 1/200 scale Trumpeter Titanic model kit. These are available on our website at www.titanichg.com/store. I'm putting this on my private YouTube channel rather than the main one because this is probably not going to be the only one you get. This is an impressive model. I went to a hobby fair a few weeks ago and this was the talk of the show. Everyone was very excited to see it. As an added bit of fun, you very well may be able to acquire a 1/200 scale Nomadic to accompany your Titanic model. We're working on 3D printing these, for the most part fully assembled, although you will be able to paint them. So again, check it out on our store if you haven't already gotten one, and please be sure to subscribe. Thank you.